Welcome to the Fab Four podcast. I'm your host, Alic Williams. We are glad that you have joined us today. If you haven't already, go ahead and give us a follow and a like on our social media accounts. Let me introduce the Fab Four. I'm glad to be joined today by my co-hosts, Scott Franklin, Todd Polston, and Ben Bertram. We've got a great show planned for today, so let's go ahead and get started. Guys, how's it going?
Living the dream.
Another great day, Alec.
All right, let's go ahead and get started with our first topic of the day. That is the KHSA Board of Control meeting yesterday. They announced that there will not be a dead period and that they're going to be doing the same precautions that Andy Bashir lays out for youth sports. So meaning June 15th will be when they can start working out. Teams can start working out, groups of 10 or less. I know, Todd, you're a golf coach, so that really helps you out a lot. Guys, what do y'all think about this?
I guess I'll start it off. I actually listened to the live meeting yesterday just to hear what they said about the dead period. Of course, I'm all for it. It's going to benefit me getting an earlier start, especially with only got 6 guys technically on the golf team as of right now. So I know I can, June 15th, I can pretty much meet with all my guys every day. So I think it's good. I think they made a lot of good points yesterday talking about, just getting kids back around the coaches, getting the kids back together. I think it will be good for the athletes to, have a little fluidity, something going on in their life that's every day or every other day at least, not just, sitting at home. I think one of the guys made a good point saying they've kind of been in the dead period since, the end of February, early March. And, I think it's best if they get out and, get to do at least a little something with, their teammates or their coaches.
Is there a limit on how many players can be together in one participating group or something like in football? You can only have like 10 in a group working together or something of that nature?
Group of 10. That's all sports.
10 or less still right now.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, there's no reason to have the dead period still in place because it's basically been a 2-month dead period. So I think it makes sense. I think also they've come out with this, but it can change at any time. I mean, the day before they can practice, there might be some other breaking news and they totally take it all away. So I think nothing's solid until the day comes. I really hope it happens though, because I think every step is a step in the right direction if you do it carefully. So I'm looking forward to seeing teams being able to go out and practicing again.
Yeah, as of the time we are recording this, the KHSA has not released its guidelines yet of how they're going to let everybody do it, but this is all just coming from what we heard in the meeting yesterday. So basically, I mean, as a basketball coach, I feel this is really good for our team. We're a young team, so the quicker we can get with our guys, that'll be great for us. Anything else on this topic, guys?
I think all the activities are voluntary, aren't they?
Yeah,
you can't make a mandatory practice.
Yeah, that's until after July 11th or something like that, I think it is.
I think that's a good way to go about that. I mean, you can't really, if someone's on edge about all this, you can't really force them in this position where they have to choose like to play on their team or, put themselves at risk for a serious disease. So I think that was one of the things that needed to be put in there, which they got taken care of.
And one point I was going to say that was sorry for I didn't mean to cut you off out, but
No, you're good.
pertaining to golf, I talked to St. X's coach last night. He gave me a phone call and he said that like the AJGA, which is the golf governing body here in Kentucky, they're only allowing 50 players per tournament. So technically in our tournaments during the season, it takes 75 kids in a tournament for it to be a Tier 1 level competition, which is the highest in the state, which is what we play every tournament's a Tier 1 tournament. But with that point system in place, if they don't make a change, of course, KCAA hasn't said what they were going to do yet. This is just, the AJGA. But, if they only go to 50 players, even in these tournaments we have in high school, that's going to change the whole point system. That's going to change the tournaments I go to, because I'm not going to go play in a tournament that's going to have St. X, Trinity, LCA, all the best teams in the state, and us beat up on each other. And, the only top 2 or 3 teams get the major points. If one of us gets left out, we won't get to play in the all-state, championship, which is what rivals the KHSAA state championship every year. So I think it's going to be a big, seeing what the big change is going to be with how many people can play in the tournaments and, going forward in golf and every other sport.
Hey, Todd, how does this affect guys like Luke Coyle? And I know you got other players that play other tournaments. How's that affecting them? Can they play in other tournaments after June 15th?
Well, as of right now, Luke actually played in Indianapolis this past weekend.
Okay.
I know Seth Smith's going to Georgia next weekend. I think kind of once the ban got lifted where they could leave anyways, or even if you're quarantined, they're allowed to go play pretty much any event they want to. Now, I don't think they can play more than 20 events during the regular season of golf outside of, their high school tournaments. But really it's not affecting as long as they can leave the state, which the ban's been lifted, and as long as they're not representing the school, they can do pretty much play whatever they want to play.
Good.
Can parents come watching those tournaments, or like families or spectators? Can they come?
Well, I know Luke's dad caddied. I know his mom was there. I know he had a couple other people with him, so I'm assuming they were letting in at least a handful of spectators per kid. I'm not sure how many. I didn't ask, but from the pictures I saw in the video online, there was quite a few fans around the green he was putting on. So, but of course, that was Indiana.
Yeah.
So I don't know what
Right.
the difference is there.
All right, let's move on to our next topic. UK announced yesterday that they will be playing Notre Dame in basketball for the next 3 years. The first year will be at Rupp Arena. The second year will be at a neutral site to be announced. And the third year will be at Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish and the Cats, which y'all's take?
Well,
I like it. I think you go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Ben. Alic, I'll tell you this. I'm just excited for Todd that it's not Evansville. I don't think he can handle another possible game with the Purple Aces. So I'm just thankful that it's not Evansville, and I hate it for Indiana, but that's the way things go.
I think you get the people every year that look at UK's schedule and they think it's weak, and honestly, they're not super wrong considering how good of a team historically UK has been. So I like the move to beef up the schedule, especially for a 3-year period. It's not just a one-time thing. And then you got the Michigan game, not next year but the year after. So moving in the right direction there. The SEC can kind of be unpredictable in basketball. You got some years where they got 7 or 8 teams, and then you got some years where they got 4 or 5 teams. So, and then at one time you can have 5 SEC teams ranked, you can have 1 or 2. So I like the move to go outside of the SEC to kind of rely on some good matchups there.
Yeah, I agree with what they said. I'm excited for the series coming up. I think it's actually going to benefit us more next year. I think the schedule is going to be very tough next year with Duke. When we play UNC next year, you're going to get Kansas, Texas Tech, or West Virginia probably in the Big 12 SEC showdown. You're going to have Louisville again. Now you're going to add Notre Dame to that, a neutral site. It can only help the schedule, like Ben said. A lot of fans, I think, are upset every year about who we play at home and all that stuff, which, you got to work around contracts and all that stuff. But I'm looking forward to it, and I'm definitely glad it's not Evansville, for sure.
I know Jerry Tipton's gonna have a ball 15 minutes before tip off, posting a picture of the fans.
Yes, he will.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
I'm glad they're getting Notre Dame on the schedule. I like Notre Dame when I'm not a big Louisville fan like I am normal. And I'm glad they're making the trip to South Bend. The Cats normally, if they're going to play a Power 5 school like that, they want to play them in a neutral site unless it's the Big 10 or Big 12, whatever it is, challenge that they're in. So I'm glad they're making the trip to South Bend, which that's
I love
2 years
seeing
down
I
the road.
love seeing
3 years down the road.
the big matchups home and away. You know, you get the UK Duke game, UK Kansas game every year at the neutral site games. Those are cool. I'm never going to complain about playing a team like that. But you just love seeing like going to someone's place or like someone come to your place playing. I just think it makes it 10 times better.
Ben, let me add to that. Ben, I'm with you on that. I'm old school. I think we need to play teams on their floor, and they need to come to our floor. I don't like the locations sometimes. And as a fan, I know that there's a lot of discussion about the home schedule every year, as Todd said. I hate our home schedule most years because as I was growing up, we always played North Carolina, Indiana, Louisville. There was just numerous games that were big-time games in Rupp Arena. And then the next year, they had to go those places. And I know what happened at Indiana, and I know that our coach is very upset with the behavior there and so forth. But, man, I miss home and away, back and forth with these great teams. But I understand that we play in those neutral sites because it gets you in the big arenas, preparing you for the tournament, and you get to play big-time schools. But, man, I sure like it when we play good teams at home.
All right, the next topic we're going to talk about is Johnny Juzang gets ruled eligible at UCLA. Guys, what's your take on that? And if the star kid from Wake Forest gets eligible, what's your take? Ben, starts off.
Well, with Juzang, I'm not surprised. I guess the move back home, I guess you could consider it. And then with all the virus stuff going on, I guess it makes it a little bit different than this year than any other year. For the Wake Forest kid, as you call him, I'm happy. I'm excited that what's gonna come with that because I think I'm optimistic about what they're gonna decide. If they rule Juzang eligible and they're ruling these other guys eligible, I can't imagine the backlash that would come if they somehow don't rule him eligible. So I think the NCAA is in a pickle here if they rule him ineligible. But I mean that can all be avoided if they let him play, which they should.
Todd.
Yeah, I'm with Ben. I think a lot went into, we tried to get the kid from Purdue and then, obviously the DeAndre kid from Evansville and then, the SAR kid decided to transfer. And, I think he's a program changer, game changer for next year's team. I mean, he's that good. He's an all ACC player. I'm very optimistic. Like Ben said, I think he'll be eligible. I think a lot of people think he will be. I just think obviously it only helps us in next year if he is eligible. So, I don't think the NCAA wants the backlash, but it's Kentucky. I mean, I hate to be the biased fan, but I mean, we've seen in the past that, Cal can give up all these players that transfer and give them waivers or let them go and they get eligible. And then, people like Cantor don't get eligible and so on and so forth. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, I was on the Johnny Juzang train. You can ask my family members. He was one of my favorite players, even though I know he was just considered a role player last year. I really thought that eventually he was going to become a really good player. And at the end of the season, I thought he might have been our best shooter on the team as far as squaring up and shooting the basketball. And I thought he was going to stay at Kentucky, and I really think we could use him because I know every year they say these guys can really shoot. And then the season starts, and some of those guys aren't near as good shooters as what we have been told. But I saw this kid make shots in big games last year towards the end, and I was hoping he would stick around. But I'll go along and agree with you guys. I think the guy from Wake Forest is going to be eligible. If the reasoning is I moved away from the school because of the virus and to get closer to home and so forth, and this kid's coach gets fired, the coach convinced him to stay, and he missed the opportunity to go in the NBA draft, I think he's got viable reasons to be ruled eligible and will eventually.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting. You see Cal's kryptonite is guys that can, and they're pushing young talent, and specifically the sharpshooters, and they either don't buy into the process or something happens, they get homesick. I don't know. Those guys, you got Jamarl Baker, you got Sasha Clea Jones. I don't know if you guys remember him, but he was a 5-star, and he barely saw the court in Kentucky and left after it was a year, maybe 2. I can't remember exactly, but these West Coast guys, Kyle Wilcher, another one, which he stayed for a little longer, won us a championship, so I'm not going to complain anything about that. So, but you hope these younger guys that are coming in can start buying in, if that's what it is.
Yeah, I'm with y'all. I mean, I think he gets eligible. I mean, I think it's the next off season is when they are going to allow a kid to have that one-time transfer. So I say they're going to be pretty lenient on this year's transfers. I don't see them not allowing some kids not to be eligible, but who knows? The NCAA can be corrupt sometimes, so we'll see.
I think just to add on to that, I think that one-time transfer next year, of course, if it passes like they're saying it's going to, I think that's going to be a whole different animal for the NCAA. I think you're going to see, the Kentuckys and Dukes and stuff like that. I think they're going to be able to handpick who they want. And I think you're going to almost have, I don't want to say super team type things like you would say in the NBA or whatever, but, if a couple of teams are missing that guy that can go score a bucket and shoot a good percentage from outside, you can go get 2 or 3 of those guys at no cost from all these mid-majors. And, I think that's going to change college basketball a whole lot, especially starting next year if it passes.
Anything else on this?
I just hope they'll be able to play. I hope everyone will be able to play. I hope they let them play.
Amen, Ben.
Well,
Yep.
Speaking on that, let's go ahead and go to our last topic of the day, and that is what's our take on when live sports will return, and will it be with fans, without fans, and if it's without fans, when do we think they will be back with fans? Let's start out with Frankie. What do you think?
Golly, Alic, I don't know. I listen to all kinds of things, and I read, and I watch the news, and I get up every morning, and it's different every day. I listen to a lot of sports shows, and some of them think that they're going to start playing on time with no fans or with a slight percentage, 33% or 25% of fans. And then I saw the other day that one school said they may have 50% of the fans in there. I'm not certain, but I think they're going to start college football close to on time. And my guess would be with fans, but just maybe 33%. And I've even seen some start to, I forget what school it was out west, I think, that they're having a plan for social distancing for tailgating. And I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're going to propose a plan on how to do that. So I'm going to go with they're going to start close on time, but without fans and college football. Now, I'm not sure about you guys can see all the baseball stuff's getting ready to happen, and the NBA's discussing stuff at Orlando or wherever. And but for colleges, I'm going to say it's close to on time.
Todd?
Yeah, I agree with Frankie. I think, they can't not have college football. It's too much money. They're going to find a way to have it, I think it'll be on time, but they're going to have it at some point during the season. However they work it out. I think eventually it'll start off with some type of 33% or whatever, like Frankie said, and then I think eventually we'll have, everybody back. I just think that at some point you got to just, let whatever's supposed to happen with that type of, stuff, because, a good point, I know it's just high school, but just like yesterday when they said, how are we going to get these kids to these tournaments if you're having to do social distancing on a bus? Or if they, like for me, I would take 5 kids last year in my own vehicle to golf tournaments. So how am I going to bring my kids to a golf tournament if we're supposed to be social distancing and, getting them there? Because I'm not going to pay a fee to take a bus of 6 kids for the day to Bowling Green for a tournament when I got to pay for that. So, there's a lot of things I guess you got to, think about. I mean, they don't have to really worry about that, I guess, in college because you take one big bus and everybody's going to be checked probably ahead of time for temperatures and all that stuff. So, with the NBA coming back, looks like it's going to happen in July. Golf starting in 2 weeks. I just feel like everything's going to start back at some point. I think with the NBA finishing the season, I think that's huge for sports going forward.
I just think I'm looking at a list right now of all the leagues, when they're supposed to start, when they're now starting, if they're canceled or unchanged or whatever. And basically what I've gathered is these guys have no idea what's going to happen. I think they can go out and say, like, we're going to start on this date. Well, how do you know what's going to happen by that? As we've seen, it doesn't even need explaining. You don't know what's going to happen the next day. Tomorrow we could get something totally groundbreaking and changes it for everyone. So bottom line is these guys can negotiate. No one has any clue what's going to happen. I do think that horse racing has made progress. I think they've come out with dates with the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and Belmont. So I think they've got that settled, which that's easier than, an NBA playoff game. You just race horses with no fans, and money's fine because people are betting like crazy. With the MLB, I think the MLB has their main problem is negotiations between the league office and the Players Association. If you've been keeping up with that, you see that these front offices are they're the ones that are proposing the deals. And what it is, for example, Mike Trout, he's got a 85% pay cut proposed for this upcoming MLB season. Now, the base salary players, the players that you may never hear of, those guys are getting 10% pay cut. And I know you got the argument, well, Mike Trout makes $35 million a year. Well, if you're making $35 million a year and you are the face of the MLB like Mike Trout is the face of the MLB, are you taking that much of a pay cut? Because if you are Mike Trout, you know darn well that if you don't play, then the game suffers. So it's really just a matter of these guys in the front offices willing to say that I guess I would say they think that they matter more than they do. And the players are kind of at their disposal, which just isn't true. I wish that both sides would be a little more compromising, because I think you got the players saying, well, we're not taking pay cuts. Well, you have to take pay cuts. And then you got the front office saying, well, we want a larger percentage of the money that we do bring in. Well, you can't do that. So it's really just a matter of which side is willing to compromise. Because I doubt that both sides will equally compromise, and it makes sense, because that's just way too much to ask for in these sort of negotiations. So, I really hope that they get it figured out, because I enjoy watching MLB a lot during the summers. I watch probably every other Reds game. It stinks not having that available, but I really do hope they get it figured out. I think they will. I think it'll be a while. I also think, like I said, these other tournaments in sports, they're optimistic. They can say the dates they want to, and I hope they work, but you just never know.
I mean, yeah, Ben, like you were talking, I mean, that's all going to change daily. I mean, they can put something out, but it might change. It's probably going to change. But I think more on the college level, I think football will be on time. It's going to start on time. Schools are starting to let their football kids and other sports come onto campus now, or getting ready to it, if not. And the capacity-wise, I think it's just going to depend on what state you're in and how strict your guidelines are going to be compared to others. Here in Kentucky, I would probably say we might be able to have 33% of fans in attendance for football games. Probably high school, that's a whole different thing. I don't know how that's going to work, when it's going to work. I don't know, because I mean, football, they start practicing in first part of July, mid-July, somewhere around there, and who knows if that's going to happen. So I think that's something that's going to take a while to figure out, but when it does, we'll for sure talk about it. All right. Does anybody else have anything else to talk about today?
I think you brought up a good point there with the state guidelines, because you got California and their governor really opposed to having any sort of sports. So, like you said, it can be very vast just crossing a state border. I thought that was a good point.
Hey guys, I don't know if you're paying attention to this, but I just see across my TV screen that they arrested the police officer in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Looks like it says 3rd-degree murder and manslaughter.
It's big news.
Yeah, that is news.
All right. Last thing I got to say is we didn't speak about this when we started the show, but this is a show we will be doing twice a week, looking at maybe Mondays and Thursdays possibly. We don't know. You tell us what y'all think about it, but just let us know in the comment section below. But Ben, do you want to send us out?
Yeah. So obviously we are new to this, so we hope you can listen to this and stick with us. We're happy to be on, and that's all we have for today. And we'd like to thank you guys for listening, either on the Anchor app or Apple Podcasts, or maybe Facebook or YouTube. And if you don't mind to give us a like on our social media accounts or follow. And we'll be back Wednesday. Our guest is going to be caddy Aaron Flainer. Flainer? Is that how you say it out?
Flainer, yeah.
Flainer. Yeah,
He's the
well,
caddy.
I'm sure he'll be
He's
pleased.
the caddy for JT Polston.
No relation.
Well,
No relation.
I hope he doesn't watch me botch his name. So I'm sure he'll be happy to be on. We're happy to have him. We all got really dressed up for today. We want to be really presentable. We'll keep getting dressed up for these podcasts. Wear our best outfits. So you won't want to miss it. So until then, this has been the Fab Four podcast. Thanks for listening.
See you guys.